Hey, true believers. Chris Mack coming at you today with Uncanny X-Men 460. And hopefully I'm back. I want to give a shout out to Woodrum Illustrations for coming in and, just reviewing some really cool comics with you guys. So I really appreciate you, brother. And please make sure to go follow his channel. I'll make sure to leave the link down in the description. He is an amazing artist. And I've said this before, but all the backdrops that I use for my photography, he made for me. So I appreciate you so much, brother. Now, with that said, this book follows up the last Uncanny X-Men issue that we went over, and I apologize if I still sound like a dead toad. Life has been a roller coaster over on this end. But this is very much in the style of Chris Claremont, because we went through the whole thing with the X-Men going with the Haka, I think is how that was pronounced, and how they were able to finally make peace with them in the Savage Land. The print date on this book is August 2005. And what I mean by this is very much in a Claremont fashion, is after all this action, we get a cool down issue. Sadly, it's not one where the X-Men are playing, playing baseball, which was always kind of a traditional thing. This is more with everyone kind of getting reacquainted and kind of bringing all the story arcs from like XSE and all the stories of this time coming together. Now, before we dive into all this, let's talk about who made the book. This is Chris Claremont and Tom Rainey plots and art, Scott Hanna inker, Gina Guillaume doing colors, VC's Russ Wooten doing letters, Sean Ryan assistant editor, Nick Lowe associate editor, and then here's everyone else that was working on the book. And of course, the X-Men were created by Jack Kirby and Stan Lee. So they're returning from the Savage Land, and if you recall, Rachel was turned into one of the Hakas, and she's slowly morphing back into herself, and she goes, "These seats were made for people." Inside, I feel like I'm still Saurian, Haka. That will fade, not soon enough. You get transformed into a dinosaur. I nearly destroy the world. Visiting the Savage Land is never dull. And then, as I said, Kurt made peace with the Haka, and Bishop saying, "You really think we can trust them?" It's like, we made some important allies. And then here, this is probably the only thing about this book that really kind of weirds me out is we follow Psylocke through the majority of this book, and she always looks like she's posed for some Victoria fashion model thing, and you're just kind of like, ooh, boy. So anyway, that aside, we dive in, and this kind of reminds me, I don't remember what issue it was. I think it was when the X-Men returned from space with the Brood and whatnot. I could be wrong, but Storm goes into her attic. Her attic where she was living, and she's like, "My plans. It's been so long since I've seen you." She goes, "I desperately need to feel, peace and relaxation to indulge myself." And it's just very much akin to that issue. If you guys can't remember what book that was, let me know down in the comment. But here you start to see that things have changed. Storm's no longer in the not the basement, the attic of the Xavier mansion. The whole thing has just basically become a giant compound. Everyone has their own wing. Now here, I kind of dipped out of the X-Men during 2005 because I kind of felt like things were sort of starting to go off the rail, other than at the time, what was it? Whedon's Astonishing X-Men, but Uncanny and X-Men by themselves, it felt very disjointed. And this was during the Chuck Austin part. I didn't really follow the Claremont issues, but all of a sudden, Logan is an assassin for the Hand, and he's a global threat. And I'm like, what the hell? And this is what I mean by everything being so damn disjointed. So if you guys know what arc that's happening in, let me know, because I feel a little confused. And then here, this kind of hurts. Now, during this time in Astonishing X-Men, with Peter was brought back to life. And now for the narrative, we're following what's her name, Betsy. She goes, Rachel shares the turret room overlooking the main country courtyard with her best friend. She goes, yo, Pride, I'm back from the Savage Land with presents. I say we go totally crazy, and she pauses and look at the hurt in her face and the shock. She goes, hi. Now, here I could play devil's advocate because I see both sides of this argument. Because Rachel goes, talk about bad timing. Rachel, you look, yeah, well, what happened in the Savage Land? I guess I should have stayed there. Peter, this is X-23. She's new around here. X, this is Colossus. He used to be dead, but thankfully he got better. What's the X-Men's favorite saying? That trick never works. Now, right there, you can see that she's going through some really emotional moments. She goes, look, guys, I'm sorry I barged in. You guys are catching up. I don't mean to intrude. Don't be silly, Rachel. There's no intrusion. Please, join us. Peter, I'm sorry. I'm happy to see you, but what's wrong? I'll listen to this. She goes, well, this takes so much getting used to is all. I mean, Betsy's back. Now here, let me know what issue Betsy died in, because I didn't even know she died. So it says, Betsy's back, you're back. But what about my mom? Now, at the end of Grant Morrison's new X-Men, they had to kill Jane because she became the Phoenix again and she got out of control, and Logan sadly had to slay her. Now listen to Kitty. She goes, I don't believe this. You're angry because Peter's alive? It's not that. You don't understand. Right now, I'm not about to try. The room's yours for the night, and maybe for good. And X, Laura, she's not used to human interactions yet. She goes, why so upset? It's complicated. It seems like for me to live, my mom, Jean Grey, has to die. And whenever she comes back, I have to go. She's my mom. I miss her so much. But the anchor in my life has always been Kitty. I know it's stupid, but with Peter back, I'm afraid I'll lose her. Now, see, Claremont created both Rachel and Kitty, so he understands their characteristics. And to throw in that complication of Peter being back and Jean being dead, and how it always seems like they can never be alive at the same time, it's a very awesome way to show conflict and emotional resonance. And so I like that, because Claremont's back. He knows how to write these characters after all these years. Now, one thing I want to point out here is the Xavier Mansion has become basically a compound. And where is it? Hold on a second. Boof. Oh, here we go. Sorry, I couldn't find it for a second. So Betsy's saying how big the Xavier Mansion has become, and she goes, we preach integration, Kurt. Yet look how we live. It's like a cloistered monastery. And there's no reason, which you know full well. Like it or not, we aren't ordinary people. We don't live ordinary lives. To pretend otherwise puts innocence at risk. Great power just doesn't mandate responsibility. It arouses equality, great passion, and not always for good. That's why we embrace Xavier's dream, because it speaks to a day and a future where we don't have to worry about that. The passions and the hatred will have been cooled by acceptance. We won't be mutants anymore, just people. That's Xavier's dream. And that's why, I've said this 1,000 times, but this is why I hate modern X-Men books, because instead of talking about acceptance intolerance and integration. They want to be separatists and segregation, and that's not what the X-Men are about. So again, Claremont, after all these years, knows what the X-Men are. And this is the people that we longtime fans miss. But again, another thing, okay, so those heaviness aside, one thing that really kind of weirds me out is how Betsy, as she's going along, she's kind of flirty with everyone, with Kurt and with Beast, which we'll see here in a minute. But I love the interaction here with her and Emma. It's absolutely hilarious. Because at this point, Emma and Scott are in a relationship. And she's thinking cow. Mega cow. Elizabeth, darling. This does seem to be 1 year for resurrections. And so they even, Betsy's British, so she has the, what do you call it? Not the mannerisms, but the respect. Kiss, kiss, and she's thinking slag. Moved up to the big house, I see. Cyclops and I are the co-heads of the Xavier Institute. And much more besides, I hear. And Kitty, Psylocke shoots, she scores, the crowd goes wild. And so, tensions flare, but here Storm comes and she goes, little brother, it's true. You're alive. So before anything can happen with Emma and Betsy, Psylocke thinks, trust Aurora to remind everyone of what's important. And I love that. And here again, a Claremontism. It seems like only time that she calls him little brother and you see the big sister, little brother relationship is when Claremont writes. And I miss that because they always watched over one another. Now going back, Beast is having a hard time talking about how Betsy died in his arms and he can't believe that she's back. But look at the way that she's like, how can you tell that it's me? He's like, by scent, by touch, by taste. And I'm like, oh my goodness, Hank, you are just an animal. And then he gives her a slap on the butt. And I'm just kind of like, okay, I need to go just getting a little heated up in here. It's hilarious. Now, one thing about this book that kind of irks me is while this is a cool down issue, all of a sudden they're talking about at the beginning of the book how Wolverine's an assassin, and then all of a sudden it's been resolved, he's been beaten, and that just feels so disjointed. So again, if you guys know the arcs, let me know, but I hate how the book just seems to be resolved through, just one little piece of dialogue. It makes sense, but at the same time, it just makes the whole thing feel disjointed. Now, we're starting to get all the build up for the next issues. Rachel's having angst because of what's happening with her and Kitty. Betsy's struggling to make sure to, Rachel's struggling with Kitty, and then Betsy's kind of struggling with being alive again. She's like, am I back? Or am I back because I'm someone's puppet? As we see her brother, Jamie Braddock. So she's wondering if it's his machinations. And it's just a lot of great build-up. And minus the steamy parts of this book, it's a really good read. And I wish that Claremont would have stayed, but he didn't stay too long. I think it was maybe 20, 30 issues, and then he was gone. I'm like, damn. But just to have another arc with him writing the characters and feeling like they did back in the day is something special. Highly recommend this issue, guys. And if you've enjoyed what you've seen, please first and foremost support your local comic shop and grab a copy. And if you've enjoyed this review, we really would appreciate it if you take a moment to hit like, share, and subscribe. Helps the club channel more than you could possibly know. And if you won't mind hitting that fancy little X bell next to subscribe, that way as we continue to upload content, you guys get notified. Come to the channel, and we love to hear your thoughts and feedback down in the comments below or our social media pages, which I'll make sure to leave the links down in the description. And hopefully I'll stop sounding like a dead toad here in the near future. And with all that said, I hope you all continue to have an absolutely amazing day reading, and happy hunting, true believers.